On this planet, there are places so strange that standing within them feels like walking on another world. To reach them, travelers must push beyond comfort, crossing deserts without water, climbing slopes without paths, and descending into valleys where light itself behaves differently. Every location challenges what we think Earth should look like. These lands are not fantasy or fiction. They are real, they exist now, and they wait for those brave enough to seek them out. If you love discovering the extraordinary hidden within our planet,
So if you want more journeys into the unforgiving, the beautiful, and the unknown, subscribe. Hit that button and join us as we explore the places that don't fit on postcards.
subscribe now and join us as we explore the most alien places you should ever visit. A journey beyond imagination begins here. Socotra Island rises from the Indian Ocean like a lost fragment of an ancient world, isolated for more than 20 million years after breaking away from the Arabian Peninsula. This separation allowed life to evolve in total solitude, producing one of the highest concentrations of endemic species anywhere on Earth. Over 1/3 of its plant life exists nowhere else, shaped by extreme heat, salt winds, and months without rain. The dragon's blood tree stands as the island's most iconic symbol, with a dense canopy shaped like an upturned umbrella and red resin that oozes from cuts in the bark. Ancient civilizations believed this resin was the blood of dragons, using it in medicine, dye, and ritual ceremonies across the Mediterranean and Asia. The tree's unique shape allows it to capture moisture from fog and channel rainwater directly toward its roots, an evolutionary response to one of the driest climates on the planet. Each tree can live for hundreds of years, growing slowly and developing thick trunks that store water through the harshest seasons. The younger trees cluster beneath the canopy of their elders, creating multi-generational groves that have survived unchanged for millennia. Walking among these trees feels surreal, as if stepping into a landscape designed by an alien intelligence rather than natural selection. The limestone plateau stretches for miles, covered in pale stone and scattered with vegetation that looks more like coral than forest. Bottle trees rise with swollen trunks that resemble pale balloons, storing precious water inside flesh-like bark that feels soft to the touch. The cucumber tree produces thick, stubby branches covered in waxy leaves, adapted to reduce water loss in the constant wind. Caves hidden within the rock hold traces of ancient Sanskrit inscriptions, evidence that sailors once used this island as a landmark between continents. The beaches are pristine and empty, with sand so white it reflects the sun like polished bone, while turquoise water laps against shores where few human footprints ever land. Today, reaching Socotra requires planning and patience, but those who arrive describe it as one of the most otherworldly experiences available without leaving Earth. The Danakil Depression lies in the Afar Triangle of Ethiopia, sinking more than 400 feet below sea level into one of the hottest and most hostile environments ever recorded. Daytime temperatures often exceed 120 degrees Fahrenheit, with no shade, no vegetation, and air so dry it pulls moisture from your lungs with every breath. The landscape is a kaleidoscope of sulfur, salt, and mineral deposits glowing in yellow, green, orange, and white across cracked earth and bubbling acid pools. Erta Ale volcano stands at the northern edge, holding one of only 6 permanent lava lakes in the world, where molten rock churns endlessly inside a black crater. At night, the glow from the lava reflects off rising smoke, painting the sky in shades of red and orange, while the ground vibrates with deep, rhythmic pulses. The crater rim is unstable, with sections collapsing periodically into the molten lake below, sending waves of lava splashing against the walls in spectacular bursts of heat and light. Steam vents hiss along the slopes, releasing sulfur dioxide that stings the eyes and coats everything in a fine yellow powder. The walk to the crater takes hours across sharp volcanic rock that tears through boot soles, with nothing to break the monotony except the distant glow growing brighter with each step. The Dalal hydrothermal field nearby creates formations that look like they belong on Jupiter's moon Io, with acid springs releasing gas through colorful mineral towers. The bright yellow sulfur contrasts with pools of green and blue brine, creating a toxic beauty that no other place on Earth can replicate. Salt formations rise like alien flowers, their petals made of crystallized minerals that crunch underfoot and dissolve in the rare rains. The ground is hot enough to burn through clothing, and pools of acid bubble with temperatures that would melt flesh in seconds. Scientists study this region as an analog for early Earth and potential extraterrestrial environments, testing how life might survive in extreme acidity and heat. Microorganisms thrive in the boiling springs, feeding on sulfur and iron and chemical processes that predate photosynthesis by billions of years. Local Afar people have lived here for generations. Mining salt from the dried lake beds and transporting it by camel across the desert. They move at dawn and dusk when temperatures drop below lethal levels. Their knowledge of water sources and safe paths passed down through centuries of survival in this unforgiving land. Walking through the Danakil Depression is not comfortable, but it offers a glimpse into what planetary surfaces might look like beyond our atmosphere. Jiangye Dansha stretches across northwestern China as a series of layered rock formations colored in red, orange, yellow, and green bands that ripple across the hills. These colors formed over 24 million years as mineral-rich sandstone and siltstone were deposited in horizontal layers, then compressed and oxidized under shifting climatic conditions. Tectonic movement lifted and tilted the layers, while erosion carved them into waves, ridges, and peaks that seemed to flow like frozen liquid. The result is a landscape so vivid and unnatural in appearance that first-time visitors often question whether the colors are real. Iron oxide creates the dominant red tones, while other minerals like manganese and copper add shades of yellow, green, and blue to the stone. Rain enhances the color intensity, making the rocks glow with an almost luminous quality under gray skies and soft light. The formations stretch for miles in every direction, each viewpoint revealing new patterns and combinations of color that seem impossible yet undeniably natural. Some sections resemble candy-striped cliffs, others look like melting wax frozen mid-drip. Wooden walkways guide visitors along designated paths to protect the fragile surface from foot traffic and erosion. From elevated viewing platforms, the entire valley reveals itself as a geological painting, each layer telling a story of ancient rivers, lakes, and climates that no longer exist. Photographers travel here to capture sunrise and sunset. When horizontal light deepens the contrast, it makes the striations appear three-dimensional. The morning light brings out the warm tones, turning the hills into glowing embers, while evening shadows create dramatic contrasts that emphasize the vertical texture of the eroded cliffs. Local legends speak of these hills as the palette of the gods, colors spilled across the earth during the creation of the world. The sheer scale and color saturation make it one of the most alien natural formations on the planet, a place where geology becomes art without human intervention. Salar de Uyuni in Bolivia is the largest salt flat on Earth, covering more than 4,000 square miles at an altitude of 11,995 feet above sea level. It formed when prehistoric lakes evaporated under the intense high-altitude sun, leaving behind a crust of salt over 30 feet thick in some areas. During the dry season, the surface hardens into a vast white expanse, broken only by hexagonal patterns formed as the salt contracts and expands. When the rainy season begins, a thin layer of water spreads across the flat, transforming it into the world's largest natural mirror. The reflection is so perfect that the horizon disappears, merging sky and ground into a single, unbroken plane of light and cloud. Standing in the center during this time feels like floating in space, with no reference point to anchor your perception of up or down. People appear to walk on air, their reflections meeting them halfway in a seamless join between reality and its double. The effect is so complete that birds flying overhead sometimes crash into the water, unable to distinguish between sky and reflection. Sunrise and sunset transform the flat into a canvas of color, with pink and orange clouds mirrored below, creating spheres of light that surround you completely. The flats contain over 10 billion tons of salt, along with significant reserves of lithium stored in the brine beneath the surface. Islands of volcanic rock rise from the salt, covered in giant cacti that grow over 30 feet tall and live for more than 1,000 years. Incahuasi Island is the most visited, offering views across the blinding white expanse and a chance to walk among these ancient plants. The cacti grow slowly, adding only a few inches per year, their spines sharp enough to pierce leather, and their trunks containing water reserves that allow them to survive months without rain. At night, the lack of light pollution and high altitude create one of the clearest views of the Milky Way available anywhere on the planet. The stars reflect in the water during the wet season, creating the illusion of walking through space itself. Surrounded by galaxies above and below in every direction. Salar de Uyuni is a place where Earth's surface stops resembling a planet and starts resembling a dream. The Wave is a sandstone formation in northern Arizona, sculpted into flowing curves and layered bands that seem to ripple like frozen water. The rock dates back to the Jurassic period, formed from ancient sand dunes that were buried, compressed, and turned to stone over 190 million years. Erosion by wind and water carved the stone into smooth, wave-like troughs, exposing layers of red, orange, pink, and yellow that shift in tone depending on the angle of the sun. Only 20 people per day are allowed to visit, awarded through a lottery system designed to protect the fragile surface from damage. There are no marked trails, no signs, and no facilities, making navigation dependent on GPS, maps, and careful attention to the terrain. The hike covers about 6 miles round trip through open desert, where summer temperatures can exceed 110 degrees, and water sources do not exist. Hikers must carry everything they need, and those who lose their way risk dehydration and heat stroke in terrain that offers no shelter or landmarks. The desert surrounding the Wave is deceptively uniform, with few distinguishing features to guide the unprepared back to safety. Those who reach the Wave describe it as one of the most surreal landscapes they have ever seen, a place where geology creates forms that feel deliberately designed. The stone is soft and porous, meaning every footstep leaves a mark that can take years to fade, which is why visitor limits remain strictly enforced. The curves appear almost liquid, as though the rock is still flowing, still moving, caught in a moment between transformation and permanence. Photographers wait for midday light when the sun is directly overhead, illuminating the curves without harsh shadows and revealing the full spectrum of color. The layers contain different mineral compositions, each responding to light in its own way, creating subtle shifts in hue that change minute by minute as the sun moves. Standing inside the formation, surrounded by flowing stone, you feel as though the earth is moving beneath your feet, frozen in a moment between stillness and motion. The silence is profound, broken only by wind whistling through the canyons and the occasional cry of a raven overhead. Lye Geyser rises from the Black Rock Desert in Nevada, a man-made accident that has grown into one of the most colorful and alien geothermal features in North America. It began in 1964 when a geothermal energy company drilled a test well and inadvertently penetrated a superheated aquifer beneath the surface. The well was not properly sealed, allowing mineral-rich water to escape under pressure and slowly build calcium carbonate mounds around the opening. Over decades, the minerals accumulated into terraces, spires, and pools, colored in red, green, and orange by thermophilic algae that thrive in the scalding water. The geyser now shoots water up to 5 feet into the air, with steam rising continuously and creating an otherworldly silhouette against the flat desert horizon. The vibrant colors intensify in summer when heat accelerates algae growth, making the entire structure glow like a living sculpture. The mounds continue to grow each year, adding new layers and formations as the water deposits more minerals in bizarre shapes that resemble coral, mushrooms, and abstract art. Some sections are smooth and rounded, others sharp and jagged, all of it dripping with color and moisture that never dries in the desert air. Surrounding the geyser, smaller pools reflect the sky and hold water at varying temperatures, each hosting its own microbial ecosystem. Some pools are cool enough to touch, while others boil at temperatures that would cause instant burns. The site sits on private property and was closed to the public for decades, Recently, limited guided tours have been offered, giving visitors a rare chance to see this accidental wonder up close. Walking toward Fly Geyser feels like approaching an alien artifact, a fusion of human error and natural process that created something entirely new. Lake Natron in northern Tanzania is one of the most caustic bodies of water on Earth, with a pH level that can reach 10.5 due to high concentrations of sodium carbonate. The lake sits in the East African Rift Valley, fed by hot springs rich in volcanic minerals that create an environment hostile to most forms of life. Temperatures in the shallow water often exceed 140 degrees Fahrenheit, turning the surface into a red and orange expanse caused by salt-loving microorganisms called halophiles. These microbes thrive in extreme salinity and produce pigments that color the water in shades ranging from deep pink to bright red, depending on the season. The lake is also famous for its eerie calcified remains of birds and bats that died after crashing into the reflective surface and were preserved by the mineral-rich water. The alkaline chemistry encases their bodies in a shell of sodium carbonate, turning them into natural mummies that remain intact for years. Some stand upright on the shore, calcified in the exact position they died, creating sculptures that look deliberately arranged but are entirely natural. The lake's surface reflects the sky so perfectly that birds flying overhead mistake it for open air, striking the water at full speed and dying on impact. Despite its hostility, Lake Natron serves as the primary breeding ground for lesser flamingos, which feed on the algae and build nests on the salt crusts during the breeding season. The isolation and harsh conditions protect the nests from predators, making this one of the safest places for flamingos to reproduce in Africa. Millions of flamingos gather here, their pink bodies contrasting against the red water in one of the most spectacular wildlife gatherings on the continent. The flamingo chicks hatch on the salt flats, their legs quickly developing the thick skin needed to walk across the caustic surface without injury. Approaching the lake requires caution, as the shoreline is covered in sharp salt crystals and the air carries a strong sulfurous smell. The ground crunches underfoot with every step, and the heat radiating from the water is intense. Standing at the edge, you witness a landscape that looks like it belongs on another planet, where water, salt, and heat combine to create beauty through extremity. Pamukkale in southwestern Turkey is a series of white travertine terraces formed over thousands of years by calcium-rich thermal springs flowing down a hillside. The name means cotton castle in Turkish, describing the appearance of the white mineral deposits that cascade like frozen waterfalls across the slope. Hot water emerges from the ground at temperatures around 95 degrees Fahrenheit, carrying dissolved calcium carbonate that precipitates as it cools and flows downward. This process has created pools, ledges, and stalactite-like formations that gleam white under the sun and glow softly in the evening light. The ancient city of Hierapolis was built directly above the springs over 2,000 years ago, with citizens bathing in the thermal waters for health and relaxation. Ruins of Roman baths, temples, and a massive necropolis still stand, blending human history with natural wonder. The necropolis contains thousands of tombs and sarcophagi, making it one of the largest ancient burial sites in Anatolia, evidence of the city's importance as a healing center. People traveled from across the Roman Empire to bathe in these waters, believing them to cure ailments ranging from rheumatism to digestive disorders. For decades, hotels were built on top of the terraces, and visitors walked directly on the formations, causing significant damage and discoloration. The constant foot traffic wore away the white deposits, revealing gray rock beneath, while drainage from the hotels reduced water flow and left sections dry and crumbling. In the 1990s, the Turkish government removed the hotels, restricted access, and began restoration efforts to return the terraces to their original white brilliance. Water flow was carefully managed, allowing the calcium deposits to rebuild over damaged areas, and years of patient work have restored much of the site's former glory. Today, visitors must walk barefoot along designated paths, feeling the warm water flow over their feet as they move between pools. The water is pleasantly warm but not hot, carrying minerals that leave skin feeling soft and smooth. The combination of bright white stone, turquoise water, and ancient ruins creates a scene that feels mythical, as though stepping into a place where gods once bathed. Pamukkale is proof that beauty can emerge slowly, one mineral layer at a time, over centuries of patient natural work. Antarctica's Blood Falls pours from the tongue of Taylor Glacier, releasing water so rich in iron that it stains the ice a deep red color. The water originates from a subglacial lake trapped beneath 1,300 feet of ice, sealed off from the atmosphere for over 1.5 million years. This ancient lake is one of the saltiest natural bodies of water on Earth, 3 times saltier than seawater, preventing it from freezing despite temperatures far below zero. When the iron-rich water contacts oxygen in the air, it oxidizes instantly, creating the vivid red color that gives Blood Falls its name. Scientists study this environment as an analog for potential life on other planets, particularly on Jupiter's moon Europa, which is believed to harbor a subsurface ocean beneath its icy crust. Microbes living in the subglacial lake survive without sunlight or oxygen, metabolizing sulfur and iron compounds in a process not seen anywhere else on Earth. These organisms represent a form of life completely independent of photosynthesis, proving that life can exist in conditions previously thought impossible. The falls were first discovered in 1911 by Australian geologist Griffith Taylor, who initially thought the red color came from algae. It took nearly a century of research to understand the true source and significance of this strange phenomenon. The discovery of the subglacial lake required radar imaging and ice core samples, revealing a complex ecosystem surviving in total darkness and isolation. Reaching Blood Falls requires traveling to one of the most remote and inhospitable regions on the planet, accessible only during the brief Antarctic summer. The journey involves flying to McMurdo Station, then traveling by helicopter or tracked vehicle across the frozen landscape. The wind howls constantly, carrying ice crystals that sting exposed skin. Standing before the red stain spreading across white ice, you witness a rare moment where geology, chemistry, and biology converge to reveal the planet's hidden complexity. The contrast is stark and unsettling, as though the glacier itself is bleeding, wounded by time and releasing its ancient secrets into the frozen air. The Eye of the Sahara, also known as the Richat structure, is a massive circular formation in Mauritania, spanning about 30 miles in diameter. From the ground, the structure is difficult to perceive, but from space, it appears as a giant bullseye carved into the desert. For decades, scientists believed it was an impact crater formed by a meteorite strike, but geological surveys revealed it to be a deeply eroded dome formed by the uplift of layered rock. The concentric rings are composed of different types of rock, each eroding at different rates, creating the distinctive circular pattern. The structure dates back to the Proterozoic era, over 500 million years ago, making it one of the oldest geological features visible from space. Because of its remote location, it was unknown to most of the world until astronauts photographed it from orbit. Today, it serves as a landmark for astronauts and a point of fascination for geologists studying Earth's ancient tectonic activity. The rings are made of quartzite, limestone, and volcanic rock, each layer representing a different period in Earth's geological history. The center of the structure contains volcanic rocks that indicate ancient magmatic activity, though no evidence of an actual eruption has been found. The surrounding desert is harsh and sparsely populated, with few roads and limited access to water. Nomadic herders occasionally pass through, their camels navigating the rocky terrain with practiced ease, but permanent settlements are non-existent. The structure sits in one of the most isolated regions of the Sahara, where daytime temperatures exceed 120 degrees and sandstorms can erase tracks within hours. Travelers who make the journey describe the experience as standing inside a planetary scar, a reminder that Earth's surface is constantly being reshaped by forces hidden beneath. The Eye of the Sahara is not dangerous, not sacred, not haunted, but it is undeniably strange. A natural formation so geometrically perfect that it seems designed rather than discovered. Some have speculated it inspired the legend of Atlantis, pointing to its circular structure and location in the Sahara, which was once a fertile region before climate change turned it to desert thousands of years ago. Atacama Desert in northern Chile is the driest non-polar desert on Earth, with some weather stations recording zero rainfall for decades. The region sits between the Pacific Ocean and the Andes Mountains, trapped in a rain shadow that prevents moisture from reaching the interior. The ground is covered in salt, flat sand and stone, with almost no vegetation and air so dry that organic material takes years to decompose. Despite the lack of rain, the Atacama hosts one of the clearest skies on the planet, making it a prime location for astronomical observatories. The European Southern Observatory and other institutions operate massive telescopes here, capturing images of distant galaxies with minimal atmospheric interference. The desert also holds vast deposits of copper and lithium, with mining operations cutting into the landscape and extracting resources used worldwide. In rare years, when rain does fall, the desert experiences a phenomenon called the flowering desert, where dormant seeds burst into bloom, covering the ground in purple, pink, and yellow flowers. This event lasts only a few weeks before the plants die and the seeds return to dormancy, waiting for the next rain. The transformation is so complete that the desert becomes unrecognizable, carpeted in color where only barren earth existed days before. Scientists study these seeds to understand how life can survive decades of dormancy. The desert's extreme conditions make it a testing ground for Mars rover prototypes and other technology designed for extraterrestrial exploration. NASA and other space agencies use the Atacama to simulate Martian terrain, testing equipment in an environment that closely resembles the red planet's surface. The soil is so dry and sterile that it rivals Mars in its hostility to life, yet microorganisms somehow survive. Hidden in rocks and soil, metabolizing minerals in ways that challenge our understanding of biology. Walking through the Atacama feels like walking on another planet, where the silence is absolute, the horizon is endless, and the sky above holds more stars than you ever thought possible. At night, the Milky Way stretches overhead in such detail that individual nebulae and star clusters are visible to the naked eye, creating a view that ancient peoples could only imagine. The Door to Hell in Turkmenistan is a natural gas crater that has been burning continuously since 1971, glowing like a giant fiery pit in the middle of the Karakum Desert. The crater formed when Soviet geologists were drilling for natural gas and the ground collapsed beneath their equipment, creating a hole about 230 feet wide and 65 feet deep. Fearing the release of poisonous gas, they decided to burn it off, expecting the fire to extinguish within a few weeks. 50 years later, the flames still burn, fed by underground gas reserves that show no sign of running out. At night, the crater glows with an intense orange light, casting shadows across the sand and creating an eerie, hellish atmosphere. The heat is so intense that approaching the edge requires caution, and the roar of burning gas can be heard from hundreds of feet away. The surrounding desert is barren and flat, making the crater visible from miles away as a glowing wound in the earth. The flames dance and flicker constantly, sometimes leaping high into the air when pockets of gas ignite, other times settling into a steady roar that vibrates the ground beneath your feet. The crater walls are black and charred, crumbling gradually inward as the intense heat breaks down the rock and soil. Local nomads avoid the area, considering it cursed, while adventurous travelers camp nearby to watch the flames dance through the night. The darkness of the desert amplifies the glow, making the crater appear even more dramatic against the endless black landscape. Stars are visible overhead. creating a strange juxtaposition between the celestial and the infernal. The Turkmen government has considered extinguishing the fire to conserve gas resources, but the crater has become an unofficial symbol of the country, attracting visitors from around the world. Plans to extract the gas and close the crater have been announced but never executed. Standing at the rim, feeling the heat on your face and watching the flames twist and flicker, you experience a strange mix of awe and unease, as though witnessing something that should not exist. The fire seems almost alive, breathing and pulsing with its own rhythm, a reminder of the immense energy stored beneath the Earth's surface. Fairy chimneys of Cappadocia rise from the Turkish landscape like towers carved by ancient hands, but they were shaped entirely by volcanic eruptions and erosion. Millions of years ago, volcanic activity covered the region in thick layers of ash and lava, which hardened into a soft rock called tuff. Over time, rain and wind eroded the softer layers, leaving behind tall, narrow spires, topped with harder capstones that protected the columns beneath. The result is a forest of cone-shaped formations, some reaching over 130 feet tall, dotting the valleys and hills in surreal clusters. Early Christians carved homes, churches, and monasteries into these formations, creating entire underground cities that housed thousands of people. The rock is soft enough to carve with simple tools, but strong enough to support multiple levels, making it ideal for construction. Today, visitors can explore these carved spaces, climbing narrow staircases, and walking through rooms that have stood for over 1,000 years. The interiors are surprisingly cool, insulated by the thick rock walls, and many still contain frescoes painted centuries ago. Hot air balloons float above the chimneys at sunrise, offering views across the valleys as the light turns the rock orange and pink. The landscape shifts in tone throughout the day, glowing warmly in the morning and cooling to pale gray by evening. The valleys between the chimneys are filled with orchards and vineyards, evidence that despite the alien appearance, this land is fertile and has supported human life for millennia. Walking among the fairy chimneys feels like wandering through a fantasy world, where nature and human history merge into something that transcends both. The formations are fragile, slowly eroding under wind and rain, meaning the landscape is constantly changing, imperceptibly reshaping itself year by year. Mount Roraima rises at the border of Venezuela, Brazil, and Guyana as a flat-topped mountain known as a tepui, shaped by erosion over 2 billion years. It stands 9,222 feet above sea level, with vertical cliffs rising nearly 1,300 feet from the jungle floor. The summit is a plateau covering about 12 square miles, where rainfall exceeds 160 inches per year, creating rivers that cascade off the edges as some of the tallest waterfalls on Earth. The rock is among the oldest exposed rock formations on Earth. The isolation of the summit has allowed unique species to evolve, including carnivorous plants, black frogs, and insects found nowhere else. The plateau inspired Arthur Conan Doyle's novel The Lost World, imagining dinosaurs surviving in isolation on a South American tepui. Climbing Mount Roraima requires a multi-day trek through jungle and savanna, followed by a steep scramble up the only natural path to the summit. On top, the landscape is alien, covered in black rock, quartz crystals, and shallow pools reflecting the sky. Mist rolls across the plateau constantly, obscuring views and creating an atmosphere of mystery and timelessness. The black rock has been shaped by water into strange formations, some resembling sculptures, others looking like melted wax, all of it slick and difficult to walk on. Quartz crystals protrude from cracks in the rock, some the size of a fist, glittering in the occasional sunlight that breaks through the clouds. Explorers describe feeling disconnected from the world below, as though stepping onto an island floating above the clouds. The silence is profound except for the sound of water dripping. Mount Roraima is not just a mountain but a fragment of Earth's ancient past, preserved by time and isolation into something utterly unique. Tsingy de Bemaraha in Madagascar is a limestone forest where erosion has carved the rock into a maze of sharp vertical spikes. The name Tsingy means where one cannot walk barefoot, describing the razor-sharp edges that cover the entire landscape. The formation began underwater as a coral reef, then lifted above sea level and shaped by millennia of rainfall dissolving the limestone. The result is a stone forest, where narrow canyons cut between towering pinnacles, some rising over 200 feet. Walking through the Tsingy requires climbing, crawling, and balancing along narrow ridges, often with the help of fixed cables and ladders. The canyons are so deep and narrow that sunlight barely reaches the bottom, creating cool, shadowed passages filled with ferns and moisture. Hidden within the labyrinth are caves, underground rivers, and forest pockets that support unique wildlife, including lemurs, reptiles, and birds. The isolation and difficulty of access have made Tsingy de Bimaraha one of the least disturbed ecosystems in Madagascar. The sharp stone and vertical terrain also make it one of the most physically demanding natural sites to explore. Those who reach the viewpoints describe a surreal landscape, like walking on the surface of an alien planet, covered in stone teeth. The Tsingy is a reminder that Earth's surface is never finished, always being shaped by forces we can barely perceive, one raindrop at a time. The limestone is porous, allowing water to seep through and carve new passages constantly. Some pinnacles are thin as blades, others thick as tree trunks, all of them sharp enough to cut skin easily with a casual touch. The rock faces are covered in small organisms, lichens and mosses that add subtle color to the graystone. Antelope Canyon in Arizona is a slot canyon carved by flash floods into Navajo sandstone, creating smooth, flowing walls that curve like frozen waves. The canyon is narrow, sometimes only a few feet wide, with walls rising over 120 feet above the sandy floor. Light enters through the narrow opening above, creating beams that shift and change as the sun moves across the sky. The sandstone glows in shades of red, orange, and purple, polished smooth by water and wind over thousands of years. Visiting requires a guided tour led by Navajo guides who know the canyon's history, geology, and the danger of flash floods during monsoon season. The best time to see the light beams is midday in summer, when the sun is high and direct light penetrates deep into the canyon. Photographers from around the world travel here to capture the interplay of light, shadow, and color within the stone. The canyon is sacred to the Navajo people, who call it Se Bighani Lini, meaning the place where water runs through rocks. Walking through Antelope Canyon feels meditative, the narrow passage and flowing walls creating a sense of movement, even though the stone is still. It is a place where geology becomes poetry, where erosion creates art, and where light transforms rock into something that feels alive. The walls are cool to the touch, retaining moisture from the rare rains that carved them, and the sand beneath your feet is soft and deep, muffling footsteps and adding to the sense of being inside something sacred and protected. The curves and spirals seem deliberate, as though designed by a master sculptor, but they are entirely the work of water, following the path of least resistance through stone. Subscribe now to continue exploring the strangest, most alien places our planet has to offer, hidden in deserts, jungles, mountains, and oceans, waiting for those who seek them.